He is back on the show from The Athletic. Anthony Slater, who covers the Lakers and the Warriors. We talked a lot of Warriors. What's up, Anthony? Good morning. We talked a lot of Warriors, and rightfully so, last time you were on, and nothing's really changed. We love a vibe check. How's it going with Golden State? What does it feel like right now over there?
Very good, but that's what Moses Moody made the point last night, because it seemed like people were like, hey, this group is so different now. Why is everybody in such a great mood? It's just like, that's winning in sports. They've won 10 straight games that Jimmy Butler's played in. So pretty much every locker room with Jimmy Butler I've been in postgame is a winning locker room, which is also always a different, happier, joking locker room. So it does seem like a happier team right now than it was prior to the trade. But that's generally just because they're a winning team right now, 12-2 in their last 14. And really one of the best teams in the league over the last month.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because Steve Kerr said they're getting an identity, which we love that word in sports. Second best in offense, second best in defense since Jimmy Butler got there. What is the identity?
Yeah, it's tougher. They have a second scorer now in Jimmy Butler. It's more versatile offensively. Jimmy Butler's getting a lot of free throws. This was one of the worst teams in the league getting to the line prior to him. I think they were fourth fewest in the league in attempts. And at one point, like during the Jimmy Butler tenure, they were first. I'm not sure they're still up there, but he is getting there. I think he's had games of 11, 12, 14, 8, and that's just so different for them. I mean, him and Steph have talked about how their opposite games are meshing. But yeah, I mean, like, I asked Steve Kerr specifically of what is the identity, and you mentioned it. He's just had a two-way team that, and to him, a guy who's obviously won 9 titles and 4 as a coach, like that means you have an elite offense and an elite defense. And you mentioned the stats. Typically NBA champions are top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and they've been top 5 in both with Butler. But I will say, and you may be getting here, it's been a very soft portion of the schedule.
Okay.
So like they haven't really been challenged.
I was just, yeah, I mean, that is fair. But still, it's kind of crazy that Jimmy Butler get there. It's been a very seamless move. It's also only been just over a month. Feels longer than that. Has anything surprised you about this transition?
Yeah, I would say, we probably talked too much about like the issues in Miami and like acted like that they would just, like whatever issues he had in Miami would just kind of go with him to the next team. It's like, no, he's not upset with the next team. The next team, the Warriors, decided to pay him. And they have a different, organizational culture, and they just don't have shared history that clearly Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley had. So not only has he been in a really good mood and a motivated mood and, trying to play every game, he's only missed one game. But he slots the rest of their team into and maybe this is what I didn't calculate coming in. He just slots the rest of their team into like their rightful places. Moses Moody suddenly can just play off him as just a catch and shoot, kind of 3-and-D guy. Pajemski, he hasn't played the last 2 games, but he's found a nice, kind of, 2-man game with Butler in those second unit lineups. And the non-Steph minutes, this has been a big story, when he's been there. Historically, they get crushed when Steph Curry's off the floor. He gets on the bench and, you can feel the arena basically counting down the moments until he goes to the scores table again. That hasn't really been the case. Jimmy Butler in that unit has been winning a lot of those minutes. So he just helps them, in so many ways. And the other thing he does is he just seems to mold his game on any particular night to what they need. If they need an individual defender, he'll turn that nozzle up. If they need to get to the line, he'll do that. If he needs to hit some isolation jumpers, he'll do that. So he's just kind of doing everything for them.
Yeah, and Anthony, you talk about when Steph is off the floor and Jimmy is there and the fans, they're not so much worried about it. But what they've been able to do collectively, it looks like Steph has found like a fountain of youth, and he's found a different level. What has Jimmy done to impact him on the offensive end, and what has he unlocked for Steph?
I think number one, the biggest thing beyond just like the strategic nature of it is like he's unlocked a belief team wide that like they're actually in contention. I think Steph was getting a little beaten down by the idea that like they just knew at various points on nights like they just didn't have the talent level, and then that generally meant to them they didn't have a chance to win a championship. And just Jimmy Butler has given Steph Curry a reason to believe that he can get in a playoff series and have a puncher's chance. And once Steph has that, you could just see his basketball spirit kind of lift. And then as far as the strategy nature of it, Jimmy Butler is just dragging defensive attention away from Steph Curry a little bit, and putting pressure on the rim and just causing tougher issues for defenses to figure out. And Steph Curry just put it, he said it just makes every possession feel a little bit easier, including, by the way, and I mentioned it, it isn't just the arena counting down the minutes. Steph Curry used to be like antsy over there on the bench, like looking at Steve Kerr, like, hey, can I come in? Now he's sitting over there, towel on his head, laughing, celebrating Jimmy Butler and ones while he's on the bench. It's just, he feels, just more at ease, number one. And two, no more knee tendonitis. I'm sure, I guess tendonitis is something that stays with you, but they're not talking about it. They're letting him play in back-to-backs. Earlier in the year, they were really managing that, and that seems to be gone at this moment.
That's so interesting. You talk about their home crowd, but we had this conversation on the show maybe a week or two ago that we couldn't think of another guy that gets the love that Steph Curry gets. Like, we can't find anybody that hates Steph Curry, that dislikes Steph Curry. What have you seen on the road in the road games that you've experienced to further along that idea that nobody hates Steph Curry? Like, has there been moments that stand out to you on the road as far as Steph Curry and away crowds go?
Yeah, you got 2 MVP chants on the last road trip, one in Orlando, one in Brooklyn. This has been a decade-long thing, really, since he exploded as like the unanimous MVP. What I've noticed over that time is it's generally little kids. It's like 8-year-old to like 14-year-olds. They come in their full Under Armour gear, Steph Curry, jerseys, Steph Curry shorts, Steph Curry shoes, signs, and it's clearly like every little kid, especially in the East cities that get to see the Warriors once a year. It's like Orlando, for example. They're always just, the entire arena is loaded with 8 to 14-year-olds who are clearly from Jacksonville and Tallahassee and various areas around Orlando that at Christmas that year go like, Mom, I want one thing this year. Get me tickets to the Warriors game. They come and it's just like this screaming celebration for the one tour date a year they get to see Steph Curry. And then when he gets going, and on this last road trip, he averaged like 35 a game and was hitting like 7 threes a game, had a 56-point game, had a 40-point game. It's just, it builds and builds, and in Orlando, by the time he hit 3 threes in crunch time to seal it, and he was doing the night, like it felt like a playoff game in a home arena. The entire crowd was standing and like exploding in unison for the road player to like take down the home team. It was kind of odd, but I'm kind of used to it.
Wait, but awesome. I take that back. We did find one guy that might dislike Steph Curry. No. Isaiah Stewart. Well, what went down with these two guys Saturday night? That was kind of funny.
I mean, Steph, especially with the way he's feeling it right now, he's over there. I mean, he does those little taunts and stuff, and it kind of takes off opponents. And I'm sure Stewart's sitting there thinking, hey, like, let's get this going. Let's get that was a really like chirpy game in general. Dennis Schroeder was heavily involved, as you can see right there in the video, partly because the Warriors like kind of unceremoniously traded for Dennis Schroeder at a time he didn't necessarily want to be traded, and then traded him again about a month later for Jimmy Butler. So it was just like at the end of a chirpy game, and Isaiah Stewart is a kind of an enforcer type guy, and he had a little shove, and I think he found out, and the Pistons found out, like, Steph Curry has a little bit of edge, a lot of edge to him, probably more than the reputation was suggesting. He has some enforcers behind him, and it became a fun little moment in the arena.
Isaiah Stewart hates Santa Claus. He doesn't count. You can't count him.
I love Isaiah Stewart. I don't want them to fight. This is like choosing between your mom and dad.
I will say he kept it a little bit more in check than the LeBron one. He wasn't quite going after Steph like that.
Anthony, let me ask you this, Anthony. Draymond Green All-Star Weekend, he goes on national TV and he makes the comment that we're going to win a championship this year. And I think most NBA fans, analysts, media kind of rolled their eyes and scoffed at that. Steph Curry even laughed at it and said, well, guess we got to go win it all. Is that now a real belief within that organization and fan base? I know you said they haven't really been tested yet, but they're great with Jimmy. Is that a real belief that they can contend for a championship this year?
Yeah, and they're kind of in the competitively crazy, competitively delusional in a way. I definitely rolled my eyes when he said it, and I'm like, man, he's putting a lot of pressure on them. I remember coming out of the All-Star break, the first game right after he said that, thinking, man, and talking to people around the team who, didn't make that guarantee, but we're part of, having to live up to it. And they're like, oh man, if we get beat by the Kings tonight, what's going to be the story on these shows tomorrow, right? With Draymond making that statement. But do y'all remember The Waterboy, the movie?
Sure. Of course.
Remember when Vicky Valancourt, I think her name is, she makes the guarantee to the sideline reporter that like they're going to win 24-17 or whatever it is. And then at one point late, like that's kind of the score and everyone, they're looking over and she's like, told you. That's a little like Draymond's not quite there, but you walk in the locker room right now and it's just like, you sure we can't win the title? Like as you're going, all right. Like I'm not picking them to win the West. But as you start to script out like who could seriously contend right now, obviously you have your teams up top, Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. We'd all probably pick them. But you start to look at that little dark horse pocket below them, like the Warriors are climbing up that list. And if they're suddenly in the West Finals and they're in a 2-2 series and Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry and Draymond are healthy and feeling that they can chase this thing down, like it's becoming a serious thing to think about.
It's not crazy anymore.
Yeah, and one guy that's going to help those chances is Jonathan Kuminga. And so, what's the deal with him? Is he close to returning? Does his role now change when he is back in the lineup with the Jimmy, or what's the update on him?
Yeah, it's the most complicated question still kind of remaining for them. It to me appeared to be a soft target with Charlotte on the last road trip. He had a 3-on-3 workout in Philadelphia, and I was in the gym afterwards, and you could tell the ankle was still bothering him. He was grabbing at it, talking to the trainers. I saw him that night after the game in Philly, which he didn't play in, obviously, but he was still icing his ankle post-game. There's just been some residual swelling. So this last stage of rehab has just taken longer than they thought. They kind of projected he might be back around last week, but I could see him Thursday night. He's had a couple of good scrimmages this last week. You're going to see him very soon. Like I said, maybe as early as Thursday. And then, what you mentioned is right. It's tough sometimes to be dropped into a rotation that's winning and successful and everybody's getting credit. And you got to take minutes away from guys right now who have been successful. He's probably going to take some Guy Santos minutes. Guy Santos was one of the stars in the Pistons game. He's probably going to take some of Moses Moody's minutes. Moses Moody's having the most consistent stretch of his career. So they're probably going to work Kuminga in just, because of the nature of the injury. Maybe it's 20 minutes in his first few games. So, it's a more crowded rotation than he left. But the reality is, in my opinion, for their playoff ceiling, championship ceiling, they need another big wing who can defend, who can switch, who can score at the rim, all that stuff. And that is Jonathan Kuminga. So I think they need him at his best, him playing 25 to 30 minutes, closing on most nights, if they really want to compete with the best teams in the league.
All right, Anthony, I want to get to the Kings, but I do have a quick question because I love titles. And so this thing yesterday, Shams Charania, shout out, reported about Steph Curry becoming the assistant GM of basketball at Davidson. First active player to do that NCAA side. So what the hell does that mean? What is he doing?
Yeah, Steve Kerr joked it was like that. It was a ceremonial title. He's giving a lot of money to Davidson, and I think if any potential recruit wants to call Steph Curry and ask his advice, Steph Curry can maybe lock down a couple commits. Right? Hey,
okay,
you should go there. You're gonna get all my gear. I'll come to practices when I can or whatever, and shake your hand. And you played where I played. That probably will get a couple better recruits. But as Steve Kerr joked, he's not going to suddenly leave the Warriors for 4 days because he needs to go scout, some high school and college games. It's a little bit just by title, because just having Steph Curry as part of your staff, we're talking about Davidson on this television show. I don't think we would have been talking about Davidson basketball otherwise. So it's a little bit of that. He's not actually, doing the GM work and building the roster and like I said, grinding tape on who they should get.
Not yet.
Michelle, I'll tell you what it is. We have a recruit on the fence that we really want. Steph, please FaceTime him and get him.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. So it's like an honorary degree from Harvard that they hand out to actors. I kind of love it. And if you get to FaceTime Steph, why not? Okay, so we will go to the Kings because this weekend was the De'Aaron Fox return to Sacramento. We've seen videos and everything that was going on. There's some fireworks there, but it sounded as if the firing of Mike Brown, for Fox anyways, was sort of the last straw. And saying last straw means there were other factors. So what do you make of that? Was that really what did it for him?
Yeah, I think the simplest way I can put it is De'Aaron Fox was looking at his future, right? He was heading up towards a contract extension, which he denied a few times, and deciding at the age of 27, do I want to entrust the prime of my career to the Kings organization? And he had questions, about who was running the show, if they were making the correct decisions, if the roster, was built to contend around him. He wants to win. He wants to win at the highest level. And as that's all going on, as he's already starting to question, the stability and the functionality of the organization, he has voiced to them that, back to the summer, back when they were kind of waffling on giving Mike Brown an extension, that look, that is my preferred coach. That is the coach who at that point in his career was the only one who had provided winning and stability and everything, structure, which Fox liked. And he told him, basically, and he's even voiced this publicly, like, if he's not the coach, then I don't really want to be on the team anymore. And then they not only fire him, but as we've reported, and it has been obvious to a lot of people, they fired him in a way that nobody took the mic and said why. And suddenly for a week, people were wondering if De'Aaron Fox really had something to do with it. And because we all put the microscope on him and he looked at the organization and said, somebody come out and basically say, I didn't do this. That was the last straw of, okay, I don't want to entrust my future to this team. And he let them know, not in a trade request, but basically like, I'm not going to sign extensions here. And my plan is to eventually move on. The Kings decided to hit fast forward and they got him to where he wanted to go. And now he's in San Antonio.
So just really quick on that, because he did mention the fact that there weren't a lot of places he wanted to go. Spurs sort of seemed like it, and it's not his job to sort of assemble a team on the floor. Did he have that much leverage ultimately in where he ended up?
Well, two things here. Number one, Rich Paul is his agent. Rich Paul is very good at his job, particularly this part of his job, as we all know. And two, I mean, because of the fact he didn't sign the extension, he's up after next year. His contract still, even in San Antonio, expires after next season. It's just, you're not going to get great packages coming back to Sacramento if Rich Paul and De'Aaron Fox are basically saying, hey, in a year and a half, we're going to sign in San Antonio. And that's the way that they generate that leverage. Maybe, you could argue the Kings should have taken this to the summer, explored other trade avenues, but they decided they wanted, they're really trying to compete right now. This wasn't a rebuild trade. They went and figured out a way to get Zach LaVine because they're trying to, make the playoffs. So they felt urgency, and that's the best move they could find.
Yeah, and you know what? Sabonis, he added fuel to that fire by saying, this offseason, we're going to need some clarity. I need clarity and understanding what we're doing. And he's still owed, 140 over 3 years. Like, do the Kings have a real culture front office issue? Because it seems like all of their guys ass out at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a question of who's making the ultimate decisions, who's in charge, who is advising the person Vivek Ranadive, the owner, who often does make decisions that can feel panicky, that can feel rushed, that can feel like always about, like, oh, there's a 5-game losing streak. What's going on? Something has to change. And Vivek, as me and Sam Amick detailed in our recent story in The Athletic, he often has somebody who isn't, necessarily in the GM role or isn't even, tied, that officially to the front office advising him. And there's always questions about what you're saying, about who is making those choices and why the priorities or the opinions are often shifting. And that leads to, at times just kind of questionable moves. And as you said, there's kind of questions on long-term this summer and beyond. Who's going to be the coach? Right now, they still have an interim coach. It would have been it was Fox's 5th coach in 8 years, obviously not his coach anymore. And then who's going to ultimately be the GM, and even whoever is the GM this summer and beyond, and maybe it's still Monty McNair, maybe it's Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox, but are they going to be the ones making the big decisions?
We were just lighting the beam, Anthony. It was so happy.
They still light it, by the way.
I know, but it's not the same. Feels different.
Awful.
Everything's changed. I hate it.
It's crazy because within all this, they're having their 3rd straight winning season. They're inched above 500, but they're above 500. They went 16 straight seasons with under 500.
Fair.
And so this is actually this is the greatest stretch of basketball for them in like almost 2 decades. But it just doesn't feel that way.
Right. It feels different. Anthony Slater, appreciate you. We will talk soon, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. We'll be right back with some Say What?
Run it back, run it up.